Okay.
There you are.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avignoni.
bringing you this world's Ascended World Collective Energy Share. And it's funny how we circle back around to things.
Well, it's
Spiral.
I like to think of it instead of circle back around, spiraling up to.
Yeah, spiraling up. Spiraling and expansion. What we've talked about a lot in the past week, well, more than the past week, but it's become more prominent in the past week, has been, a lot of people, including us, keep on getting guidance to, do the, stop doing this and do this, or not even do this, stop doing this and change direction, but no clear guidance as to what that direction is to be, right? So
right.
a lot of
the information is just stop doing this and do something different, but not what the different is.
Yes. Good morning, Gloria. And so I've had a number of conversations. We had a group online share last week where we talked about this, and because there's a lot of people that were talking about that. I've had sessions and conversations, and many of us are like, okay, so ready, and okay, be ready. It's time to stop doing this. It's time to shift away from it. And then the big question that people come back to me is like, but I don't understand. I'm not getting the clear, as what our friend Colby says, the glaring neon sign telling me what it is.
Step one, step two.
That's right. What's next? What's there to do? I'm not quite sure. And so what's happening are the energies, like there are people who it's almost like step by step. Good morning, Yasmin. And step by step, many of us are just getting pushed out of, it's like we're getting pushed out of what we've found comfortable in the past, right?
Right.
A number of people I know with their jobs, relationships, like all kinds of stuff like that. And it's like, well, but what do I do? And it's like, okay. So when we were talking about it, what is it? Circling back around to what I did the research, and it was the official episode where we talked about this was December 30th of 19, about creating without context. So now it's almost like, yeah, you might get guidance on of what to do, but you had no context about it before. Now it's just, you just are, guided to trust.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think when we had our pre-call call, we talked about that as going ahead and taking the step without seeing the step and trusting that it's there.
The moment your foot, reaches it, right? Yeah. And so
it's almost like commit to whatever it is, and then it'll be there.
Right. Except we're like, well, what do I commit to?
Right.
And that sort of that really does get us out of our minds, right? It gets us out of our thinking what it's supposed to be, right? And I talked a bit on my podcast on Thursday about people wondering what their purpose is, and running after what they believe their purpose is and everything else, because that's still a mind-centered idea.
Well, and it comes from a place of need.
Yeah. Right, a need to be.
Purpose has to fulfill a need.
Right, that where I feel like I have now attained my value.
Right,
and my fulfillment, because we then at this very subconscious level believe we weren't worthy to begin with.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's a lot. So this sounds really simple in a way. It sounds a little bit absurd in a way too, because it's like, well, how do I do this? How do I how do I do step, and I don't even know what I'm stepping.
Right. Which another thing that we said in our talk was that everything, used to be 6 steps from worthiness. Well, we're a step from worthiness now.
Well, a half step.
Yeah. So that's where the trust relies on, is having achieved that remembrance of the worthiness.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that so the need is gone because you have everything.
Right. So when you step from worthiness, in worthiness, and in
Well, that
that,
feels really good.
right? When you step from worthiness, then it's like, oh, I can step in any direction.
Right. Absolutely.
In like holographic, interdimensional, in whatever. And then it's like, okay, and I can accept whatever it is that creates in front of me because I already know I've attained what I came here to attain, right?
Right.
Every
And it's
step.
perfect.
And it's perfect. So when you say that, it's like, oh, well, that's so easy, right?
Right.
Check. We're done.
Right. Yep.
Except part of this whole creating without context is letting go without context too, right? Letting go of things that were good, that we allowed ourselves to believe were good enough before.
Right.
Relationships, jobs, I got into a conversation. Funny, our Sifu at our Kung Fu school, he has been working a full-time day job and he runs the school at night, right?
Right.
And we were wondering because the school's gotten quite populated, right? I think he's been in business for like 10 years now. If he was ever going to take the leap. And it was funny, like out of nowhere it seemed to be out of nowhere on Friday, he put on his like Instagram, blah, blah, blah. My coworkers had he quit his job, his
Wow.
day job. And he's like taking the jump to do the Kung Fu school full time, which is his passion. Like he lives and breathes it. Right.
Right.
And so we threw together an impromptu little party for him for Saturday morning, the students at the school. And, we're talking and I said to him, I'm like, so how do you feel? So what brought it on? Was this planned? And he's like,
because you think he might go the other way with the school technically closed.
Right. But it's his heart. Like it is he lives and breathes it. Like,
Right.
So, and he's got other stuff that he's an activist about and all kind of stuff. But I said, so what brought this on? And he goes, yeah, I just got to the place where it was like taking, since we shifted the school to in person and online, he says taking more time. And he's like, and it was just time for me to do it. It was like, literally like, it was just time to do it.
It was inevitable.
Yeah. And he goes, so literally he gave his 2-week notice and that like he gave his 2-week notice and left. And it was just like, wow, that's impressive. Cause when I left corporate, it took me like a year of planning for the business that I was going to. And so, but and it's like, but that was perfectly in that vein of, okay, yep. Time to stop distracting yourself with that.
Right.
And, because we were talking about different things and I said, yeah, well, I was saying, I understand. I said, yeah, I said, it was the most scary and the most exhilarating thing I ever did was leave corporate, 14 years ago. And we had this whole conversation and I said, well, the way I look at it is I'm never going to be retiring. So I might as well love what I do until the day I die. So
exactly.
And that can change. Right. So that's the whole thing for us to talk about is it can change. And so it's not only letting go of what was yesterday, right? So in a way it's creating without context and what's the word? The thing underneath it is what I can think of a word for, but is also like being so fluid without attaching identity to what we did yesterday.
Or
right?
Expectation of what the outcome is.
Yes. Or because again, that's worthiness, right? There's your half step because it goes right into, I got to do this, or I've got to do this because this is like, or at least I still have to hold on to this because this has been a part of me for whatever. And who would I be without it? Right. And so this even connects to things like drama, right? Our deepest addictions.
Right.
Who would I be without drama? Who would I be without, like, how many people think, like, and they don't think this consciously, right? Who
I
would I be
know.
without drama? Who would I be without sickness? Who would I be without limitations, right?
Right. Right.
Who would I be without, this relationship that
Hmm.
defines me?
Right.
Um, so
Right. I mean, and you can look at that relationship like your relationship with your kids,
yeah, that too. Absolutely.
because those create roles.
Yep. Yep. And
There's that identity.
there's a lot of that stuff coming up right now because of the bipolarity of things, right?
Right. Right. Well, and just think about it. Who would I be if I didn't believe I was a good person?
Yeah, that came up in our conversation last week. Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's just like mind
Right.
blowing.
Right. But again, so funny you say that, because last night we were doing our Sunday night family dinner, and so we got into a conversation, and my oldest asked, and I don't know, she was doing a survey at work at Barnes and Noble where she works, and she's like, who is your favorite villain? Right? Who are your favorite villains and why? Right? Which, causes, like, wow, that caused like an entire dinner time of conversation.
I bet.
Right? But the
Well, because
thing,
number one, you'd have to admit that you liked a villain.
exactly. Right, because everybody sort of sat there for a minute, and my youngest was like, I don't even know. And then I was like, And I was like, so it has to be a book, or can it be like a TV show or a movie? She's like, doesn't matter. It could be any media whatsoever.
Right.
And so, yeah, we had some great conversation, because she goes, and she said, the reality is, and she said it straight out. She goes, the reality is most people wouldn't read a book if there wasn't a good villain involved. Right.
Well, I mean, who reads a story that has no struggle
Mm-hmm.
or has no nothing to overcome?
Yeah. So, like, we talk about going, because you said, who would I be if I didn't think I was a good person? Like, or who would I be if I wasn't the villain?
Right.
Right. Or, it all depends on the perspective. Because what I was saying is, I love those stories where it's so duplicitous, because the villain is only a villain from the perspective of a certain person. Right. And yet it's really very different from, like, what you think. So, like, for example, Wicked, the book Wicked, right,
Right.
was a
Right.
perfect example of that, which I loved that because of that. Um, what's her name? Maleficent.
Melissa. Yeah.
Yeah, that was great too. So, anyway, so that's the whole thing. It's like, so we're so addicted to what defines us as a good person, because we don't believe we're worthy, right? So that
Right.
we have to prove that we're worthy.
Circles right back around to worthiness.
There's the half step right there.
Right.
It's like okay, but the thing is, we love the villains, like going back to the shadow stuff, right? We love the villains in the story sometimes even more than the main characters.
Well, and we have created a circumstance to where we have focused so much on the light that the darkness is such a contrast to us that we're so fascinated, magnetized by it, and drawn to it, like
Right.
the moth to the flame.
Right.
It's such a taboo almost.
Well, and all right, so if we look at that, right, and then we look at, because you say that, and it's so true, because the thing I have noticed over the past several years, and I know you and I have talked about, I think offline, I don't know that we've talked about this online or not, but how many movies have come out that were all about darkness, all dark and horror and thriller and
Right. Well,
supernatural.
and you look at popular binging shows like Game of Thrones, which I've personally never watched,
Me neither.
but
I can speak to it.
I understand that there's a lot of violence and gore in it, and look how popular it is.
Well, Outlander, right?
Right. And it's who wants to be entertained by something that's only bliss and good things happen.
Right. I mean, and we can say, like, oh no, that's not true, but but it really sort of is. And that's what we've gotten, that's what we have explored, right? So here's the thing. It's so like it really connects to like the stepping forward in trust, right? It really connects to our dissolution of that external valuation, right? Of worthiness.
Right.
Because you're like, so you always have the opportunity to be the bad person, the villain in somebody's story. Like, and even if you have the best intentions.
Right. Right. And there, in getting divorced, you come to the realization that there's two sides to every story, and there's validity and honesty and truth on both sides.
Right.
And just because someone is telling a different story than you are doesn't mean it's not their truth.
Right.
And gosh, where was I going with that?
The good person, bad person, that you're villain somebody's story,
Exactly, the villain in someone's story. I mean, I'm sure I was the biggest villain in my ex-husband's story, as he was in mine. And just because you're part of that story doesn't mean that it has to define you.
Right.
Or dictate your directions.
Right. Or motivate you or propel you in other directions either. Right.
Right.
I mean, it's to look at it to say, okay, what was the lesson here? What were the lessons here? What was there? What was that there to show me, not to project onto that person, but what was that there to show me,
right,
so that I could resolve it and not have to repeat it again. Right. And so when we
not have to repeat it in the same way.
Right. So that's when we get back to that, this whole, if I leave this, what am I? Right. And it goes back to the worthiness thing is, well, okay, do you still believe that I have to be what's defined as a good person? But here's the thing. You can ask 20 people what a good person is,
right,
and get 20 different answers.
Right.
And they're all legit and they're true.
And just the same for what makes a bad person.
Exactly. Just the same.
Right.
And
so if you start with that worthiness, then no matter what happens, it's all irrelevant. It's all perfect because your worthiness will remain intact.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I mean, and especially right now, we have so much like the bipolarity going on, right? And so much mudslinging going on. And, you're a bad person if you do this, and you're a bad person if you do this, or you're a sheep if you do this. Like there's all this stuff, right? And it's like, okay, but I'm just going to do what I'm guided to do. You can judge me. The thing is to get to the place of saying, I'm doing what I'm guided to do. I am staying in my authenticity in this moment of guidance, whatever that is. And you can judge me, and it's not going to change my unconditional self-love, or my wholeness, my presence.
Right. Or my worthiness.
Yeah.
Yeah. I base my behavior on my worthiness.
And so for us to move forward and create without context is to resolve this.
Right.
Because we won't move forward until we resolve this, because we will always hesitate to take that step forward and trust that stair is going to come, or that step is going to come under our foot, if we are afraid of what is that going to look like? What is that step going to look like? That's what we're afraid of.
Right. Right. And what's it going to, it's like trying on something. What's that step going to look like on me? What's that step going to do for my worthiness? Is it going to make me unworthy?
Am I not going to be a good person? Or
right.
am I, or like, I mean, we don't think of these things consciously, but these are the things that drive us, right?
Well, there's so much a part of our unconscious.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, things like, not only just, am I going to be a good person, but things like, am I going to be valuable? Right. I've had a lot of people who have said to me over the past several months, well, so this breath of being able to step back has been great. And honestly, I like the being a whole lot better than the doing was.
Yeah.
I mean, even some of the people I know who are the most doingest people that I know, right? So it's like, and they're like, yeah, I sort of like the slower pace. And then, but then they're worried about like, oh, but it's going to, what do they say? I'm not going to be, it's not going to be like, I'm not looking forward to going back to the same pace. And it's like, so then
Don't, right. Yeah.
It doesn't make you more worthy.
Right.
In fact, you found more worth and value in your presence by not filling your everything up to doing and filling your schedule and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, maybe, like, what if that's what this has also been a lesson in, and it's listening to everybody's story is different, because that's part of why we've faceted ourselves into these individuals that we are.
Right.
And, this sounds like it's not related, but it's totally related, because again, if we don't let go of all of these predispositions and expectations and the externalization, the need to externalize value and have others approve of us and everything else, then we won't step into the unknown.
Right. Right. We'll just tread water right here.
Actually, I don't even think we'll be allowed to do that, or we'll just totally crash and
whatever. Well, the water will disappear and
yeah. Right. So that's, that's it in a nutshell, really. So for us to focus on today is to find within ourselves, remember that innate worthiness, right? Resolving all the need to externalize our worth. And it sounds so easy. There's so many layers to this.
There really are. And as you get to, and I know they always talk about peeling back the onion or peeling back the layers, but it's like, as you peel them back, a new layers emerge.
Right.
And it's quite dynamic. Each one is unique in and of itself.
Well, it's like, what do we brought up from the beginning, culturally, societally, sociologically, right? This is what you need to do to fit in.
Fit in. Yeah.
And that is the innate valuation of your worth, right? Of being able to fit in with society.
Right. And I think in like the 4 agreements, it's domestication.
Yeah.
Like we talk about we domesticated dogs, horses, you break them, you change their behavior, and that we've done that for ourselves.
And so, and we've convinced ourselves that is the way to be worthy.
Right.
Because what we often connect our purpose, tying that in, right? What we often connect our purpose with is, what am I going to be remembered for as contributing to society?
Right.
That's what we really think.
Well, and that ensures our longevity or our memory, and that almost is a way of circumventing death. But that's believing that we actually die.
Right. Right. And so, like, for example, so here's another example on that. So what we had talked a while back about, I don't even remember in what context it was, but excuse me. Oh, we must be hitting on something. How there was this understanding or this perception of, as we are going along now, we're completing certain facet timelines, right? So divine facet timelines. And so we're stopping the genetic lines, right? So we stop having kids. Our kids stop having kids, right?
Right.
And so, I'm pretty sure my kids aren't going to have kids.
I don't think mine will either.
And if either of them do, they'll probably adopt it, maybe.
Right.
But, and so what was funny was, like, I always said that didn't bother me. It really didn't. But there was a little piece of me that was like, oh, but the whole genetic line will stop there. And then it's like, and that's right, because there's no more lessons to learn through those genetics anymore.
Right.
And more and more we're doing that. So the genetic lines are stopping, because why? There's no more genetic lessons to, like soul agreements, the family agreements, the valuations based on those agreements and all that kind
The
of stuff.
belief that in the need is gone.
Right. Right. And so, you know, look at what we've put into our culture, like, oh, well, not only having kids, but then, oh, the grandkids and this and that. And I always laugh going, well, I have my grandkitties and,
Right.
and that's probably what I'm going to have. So,
Right. That's enough to take care of.
yes. So, you know, and so that's another level of evaluation of ourselves too, is have we have we had children and to extend the genetic line, right, of our, right. So it's also connected to that idea of, oh, I have to leave some legacy.
Right. Right. Well, that belief that stems from the belief that we're gone, that there is utter death.
Right. So it's all of this stuff we have behind us. It's like all this, another sack of, you know, big sack that we drag along that we're not even conscious of. They were like, oh, why am I so tired? Yeah.
Well, that's like what I was saying when I was mowing the lawn, and I looked down at this one section, and it was like just the thought of everything that had to be held in place to create that, you know, the earth, the biome of the soil, and the animals, and the bacteria, virus, whatever, fungus. Then there's the plants and their systems and their processes, and it was exhausting. And that's just such a tiny little piece versus, you know, like we talked about, the human body.
Right.
That's overwhelming.
Right. To start thinking about, well, okay, we have what, 2 to 3 trillion cells. What if we thought about every function those cells had to do?
Right. And then you consume something.
Right.
And you're consuming the energy of all that.
All of that, yes.
And it was overwhelming, and it was exhausting to think about. And it's like, look at how much energy is freed up letting go of all those processes.
I know, because you said you were thinking about the movie Lucy. And
when her hand
starts to float away in the plane.
Right, in the airplane.
That's what we're afraid of, right?
Exactly.
So, and then what do we think? Oh, well, what if I lost my, you know, my substantiveness, right? Like my physicality, right? We equate that to value here.
Right.
Oh, this is so much bigger than a bread box. Like, oh my God, the more we talk about it, I just
know.
I
know. It's like opening Pandora's box and finding another one and opening that one.
Yeah.
Nesting Pandora boxes.
Right. Yeah. And so it's almost like, okay, well, we got to stop thinking, because that's part of the thinking about it, right? That's
right. And I think that what we came up with is that it is all comes back to that worthiness.
Yeah.
And if that's your focus, and if that's where you base your doing from, is already having the worthiness,
right,
it changes everything.
Right. Because when we're in that place of, so, all right, I mean, and it's just another example of what so many are getting. Like I said, I'm getting so many people saying, I feel like it's time for me to change this, right? Whatever this is in their life.
Right.
Job, relationship, where they live, whatever. It doesn't even matter. And then they're like, but I'm not sure. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do if I'm not doing this. And it's like, but have you even tried? Have you ever even thought, or just said, not even thought? What if you just took a step and said, okay, I'm going to do this independent of this.
Right.
And the more you do that, the more you can just step away from that, right? Completely. And trust that it might be completely different. And, you know, I think back to, you know, my precursor to this was when I did leave corporate, because I had the voice that said, get out.
Right.
And I had a great career. I had a great job. I had a great position and a great paycheck and all this kind of stuff. And it was get out and go do this. And it made no sense, because it wasn't the same thing. It wasn't anything close to the same thing that I was doing before, you know, or had been successful in. And I just, some reason, like, it's really funny as I look back and I think, God, how did I even get to the point where I was just ready to do that? But, because it wasn't horrible. It wasn't horrible. It was, tolerable and expected and whatever, right?
Right.
In the context that it was in. So somehow I did that. And I laugh thinking back on, damn, like, okay, well, look at, where it got, like, I went from this to this to this to this. It was like this little zigzag, right, before I even got to this. And I think that's what we're all we're coming to this point of getting to again is, okay, step away from this and go do this. And it might not make any logical sense in your head right now.
Right. Right.
And so if we have that space of confidence and trust in that voice, right? Which means you have that trust and confidence in your own worth of being able to hear it, being able to understand it, knowing that no matter what happens, it's the right choice, that there is no wrong choice.
Right.
It exploded when I did that. It exploded a lot of things in my life. And so some people would look at that as bad. I look at it as the most productive period of my life.
Absolutely.
Because it shifted me to a much more authentically pure and honest place.
Which feeds that belief in the worthiness and the remembering of that.
Right.
So it's self-fulfilling.
Yes. And so when people say, well, how do you know? I'm like, all I know is whenever it's happened to me, which has happened multiple times in my life, it's always worked out. It's always been fine.
Right.
And actually leaving corporate wasn't even the first time that it happened to me. Leaving New York, it happened to me. Like, it was like
right.
on a whim. And so the more, and it's easier. So the more we do it, and then we feel like, okay, that all was fine, right? Or that all worked out, even if it did cause a lot of explosions, then you get to trust it more, right? And the more we do. So like the thing is, people ask, well, how do you trust it? It's like, well, you've got to trust it at some point, or else you're going to end up getting yourself kicked in the butt by your higher self and get pushed out anyway.
Right. You could do it now when it's easier, which is a judgment.
Right. We could do it in a way that is not as explosive.
Right.
Even if you might think it is. Right. So,
right. And Gloria says that it brought you where you are today.
Exactly. So I have there's no regrets. I am so thankful. Not only no regrets, I am so thankful to have had that guidance and to have listened to it and to have the experiences. I mean, the experiences that I've had have been incredible, and they just continue that way. So the more I trust, the more incredible the experiences get. Right. And so that's what I tell people. It's like getting up on that high diving board. Right. And so you get up to the high diving board and you freeze, but they say you can't go back down the steps. You got to go off. So what many are getting to the place of getting up to the high diving board, and they lock the ladder behind you, and you got to go off. So you could stand there and stand there and stand there. At some point, you're going to have to jump off that diving board.
Right.
And by the way, you wouldn't have put yourself in that position unless you had a step beyond that.
Right.
Unless you had something to jump.
Created it for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Knowing full well you could do it.
Yeah. So all of these are very deep, and I just see that connection now with that good person thing. Like, because again, then people think, what people are going to think of me if I change my life direction,
right?
Or if I do this, or if I leave this relationship, or if I leave my job. I had so many people say to me, why are you leaving? Like, that's crazy. You have such a great, career and da-da-da.
And then, once you get beyond what everybody else thinks, then it's like, what do I think?
Right.
What if I don't believe I'm a good person?
Right.
Then that's another step.
Right.
To get to that worthiness.
Yeah. So I think the first step is resolving all of that, right? To allow,
absolutely,
because it's still like innate definitions that we try to run ourselves by, right? What is a good person? What is a bad person? And we say, oh yeah, okay, there is no good and bad, but at the back of our mind, it's like, but if I do this, I'm a good person.
Right, right, right. I can say that there is no good or bad, but then everything that comes up, I use we're taught to filter it.
Yes. Yeah. And our words mask it.
Right. Well, we've become very creative with our words.
Yeah.
I think they refer to it recently as politically correct.
Well, it's funny. I did see a meme out there, and I think it was, I don't remember who it was. I don't remember what celebrity they had on there, but it's like, so you resist wearing a mask or whatever, but yet you've been wearing a mask your entire life.
Yeah.
And I saw that, I thought, yeah, I mean, that's the funny part, right?
Right.
We're sort of calling ourselves out now, aren't we? Right.
Right. Well, and if you think about it, this full meat sack is nothing but a mask of who we really are.
Exactly. Well, yeah, the whole meat sack, yeah, the meat costume. And it's like,
The
okay.
meat bag, like the fish bag.
Yeah. Your meat bag. Oh, that's the new one. Hey, you meat bag. Because it's really what it is.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's like, well, and again, we already talked about that stuff anyway, but that is the funny part. And it's funny that we've come to that place of, of collective awareness that's been, moving so quickly for especially the past decade.
Right.
And then we get to this, and then right away, what do we want to do? We're covering up with a mask because we're coming into our authenticity. It's like, hurry up. Oh, no, cover yourself. Cover yourself.
Right. Right.
No shame that you should be okay with just being who you are. That's really, yeah. And just in a representations, there's no judgment with that. It's just an observation. And it's like,
right.
And it's like, wow. Yeah. Yeah. So that shows how deeply we have that goodness, like the idea that we have to fit in, and that goodness equals fitting in and doing what everybody else is doing.
Right.
That or approving of, or what the commercials say we're supposed to be like, I mean, and you say, people would say that's ridiculous, but it's the truth.
Right.
Commercials are built in psychology. That was my corporate job, marketing and communications for 17 years. It is all psychology. What is going to make the potential customer do what we want them to do to buy our product or our service?
Right.
That is what.
Well, and you said you saw the movie WALL-E.
Yeah.
Recently, and you know how they're all floating around in their chairs, and all of a sudden the commercial comes up, and they change the color of shirt, and one by one, everybody
change the color of shirt. Yeah.
Yep. And part of me wants to put Amazon underneath the TV
right.
screen.
Yeah, instead of the company name, make it Amazon. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that the truth? Right. And so we have so much of that built in. So then it's like, okay, well, our ego gets so embedded with this. So so many of the decisions that we make are based on what is going to make others approve of me.
Right. So that I can be dependent on them for my worthiness.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a very intricate web.
And it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the intricacies and interplays, and I mean it's phenomenal.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not needed anymore.
Yes, and we are sort of addicted to that too, though, that web.
Right. Oh, right.
Because
and adding to it, creating even more intricacies.
Exactly. Instead of saying, okay, we're done with this, now we're like, oh, but what are we going to be without that? What am I? You want to talk about a bigger collective ego kind of question is, well, what are we going to be without that web?
Right.
Of identification and of valuing, identification based on valuation that's built on all of these things. If you're guided to go live in nature and not talk to another human again, that doesn't make any difference
Right.
on your worthiness. Yeah, Gloria says wanting to fit in or be part of the pack.
Right.
Yeah, and then say, well, they say, they talk about how, oh, well, humans are social by nature. It's like, or is that something that we've just so deeply incorporated into our psyche, right?
Right.
That we
Right.
feel, because that's what we say, oh, I feel like, and I mean, we all do, like, oh, I need to have somebody else. Every once in a while, oh, I need to see somebody else, or I need a different of this, or, that kind of stuff. And that then starts, like, we all have those moments, but the more we stay connected and we realize we are all connected no matter
Anyway.
what, it doesn't matter.
Right.
We're all whole, whether we pretend we are or not. So it doesn't matter.
Right.
We're all valuable, because if we weren't, we wouldn't have embodied ourselves in these meat jackets, right? For whatever reason, to incorporate into the interaction of this web, to say, okay, I'm not addicted to the web anymore, to say I'm going to release or resolve my addiction to the web, and just see it for what it was, as perfect, and the playing out of the symphony as we had chose it, right?
Right. Right.
And to say, okay, and now I'm done. And now I'm going to trust that every step I take forward is just a step of being whole.
Right.
That's scary to the ego.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, even when I say that, there's a little voice. Now I know it's a lot bigger for some people, but there's a little voice going, really? Are you really ready to do that?
Right. Right.
What would that look like, right? Because the ego wants to know what that would look like. Would I like that?
Right.
Versus it will be awesome because I create it in that space of being awesome. So I don't even know, like, there's like, it's almost like we just pulled a linchpin out.
I know, but I think it everything circled right back around to that worthiness.
Yeah. So,
and doing from a place of worthiness.
Yeah. I mean, and yes, we've talked about this a million times, but this is really, it's unraveling the tapestry, right? So it's finally pulling the string, the core string that's going to allow it to dissolve, right? So that we now create a completely different tapestry. Now, do we even know, like, it has a different set of roles, a different set of, presentations, like a different vibration altogether. And to do that, though, is to resolve and complete and allow all that to unravel into itself, into the whole again, to look in the next to look to the next step, even if we don't remember what that is, because of course it's going to be out of context. If we have a whole new set of rules, a whole new tapestry, a whole new whatever, we have to let ourselves let go of all of this first.
Right. Why would we want to bring that with us if it's all new?
Right. And so what we've been talking about also, and that connects into seeing the earth as being the doorway itself.
Right. Right.
Talking about Wally, right? And bringing all our crap to the door, to leave it at the door.
Right.
All the judgment, all the polarity, and all that kind of stuff, all of the old tapestry of the unworthiness and disempowerment and externalization. We brought it to leave at the door so that we then can just transform the door itself, right? And so, like, and that's what I was laughing, because after we talked about that, and then I watched the movie Wall-E, and I was like, oh, look at how they represented Earth as a big, landfill.
Right.
That's so perfect, right? So, whatever it is for us to be able to do that, to observe ourselves, to trust, to accept, letting go the completion of that web.
Right. Right.
Of creation, right? The addiction to external, valuation, the unworthiness, like the completion of all of that, the gratitude for it and the experience, so that because we're now ready to move into what's next.
Right.
and look at the beautiful thing we created before. So we can create something even more beautiful, or just something else that's beautiful as well. We have the ability as the divine. So yeah, to allow ourselves to do that individually and collectively, freely and easily, whatever it is for that.
Yeah.
That feels good.
All of that.
All of that. All right, we ready?
Yes.
I know we're already sort of out there, but I forgot to say, anybody who doesn't know, who's new to this or is listening or watching, and just close your eyes, take a deep breath, and be open to receive. That felt really good.
Oh, no, I could have just stayed all day.
Me too. It's like,
Yeah.
wait, where am I? Where am
Yeah.
I?
Yeah, I could get lost in that. That was
I
great.
did. I actually literally kept on going sort of like through doorways, right? Because it was
Right.
like, oh, and there was like a couple of rooms I go in. It was like a big scene, and it was like going onto a stage, right? Where all the set was still there and the costumes were sitting there, but like the play is over. And I was like sad for a moment, and then I was like, oh, okay, no, no, this was really fun, and glad to have it. And then I moved to the next room, and it was like there were just one after the other. It was like all these different things, and oh, it feels so good.
Yeah, that was great. Really enjoyed that.
Man,
I have to go back.
yes, holding that space, going there. Yeah. So, all right, everybody, that's our home play for this week. So stay conscious of that. Stay in that place. Come back and do this little mini session again as many times as you need. Focus on observing yourself and your motivations and your trust. And can you let go? Can you just let go of what you might be getting guided or getting pushed to let go of, even if you're not sure
Right.
why,
Yep. And keep in mind your worthiness level.
right? Can you do that saying, of course I can do that because I'm worthy and I'll be awesome no matter where I am or what I'm doing or
Right.
whatever. So, yeah, little baby steps. That's all.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll see y'all next week. Thanks for joining us. This is Angela Coulter, and
There's Sieg Evignoni.
we'll see you next time on Ascended World. Have a good one.